Well, the top two in the Premier League are ready to do battle as Chelsea host Arsenal this weekend in a game that could have a big impact on the title. Managers at two of the league's biggest clubs, meanwhile, are under pressure, with big tests ahead for Liverpool and Manchester United on Sunday. And it's getting tense also at the bottom, with just 5 points now separating 6 teams. We've got it all covered here on The Assist. Well, welcome along to The Assist in association with freesupertips.com, your home for daily football hackers and bet builders. I'm Warren Ashurst, and this week I'm pleased to say I've been joined by both Dan Childs and Tom McGarry to discuss their thoughts and tips on both the Premier League and EFL fixtures this coming weekend. Don't forget, of course, you can interact with us and give us your thoughts on the Racing Post YouTube channel. Something which Paha Kuti did last week, said Fulham have the oldest side in an increasingly physical EPL. Apparently the average is just over 28. Maybe experienced players can turn the season around by winning games with a 1-goal margin, but the board definitely forgot to make transfers in the summer to refresh the side. And of course, Fulham went on last week to win by that 1-goal margin against Sunderland. And a mention for Ian Johnson as well, who says the last man standing competition with a leading bookmaker is into round 12, getting very difficult as most of the top teams have been picked. His next selection was Crystal Palace last week to win away at Wolves, so he is now just under 3,000 players left. He's amongst those 3,000, Ian Johnson, and has another to pick this week. Hopefully we can give him some guidance going into the weekend's fixtures. And we'll start off, of course, in priority order. And we have to start with the 4:30 clash on Sunday. It is Chelsea against Arsenal in the big one in the Premier League. We'll run through the prices in a moment, but both of these two teams, Dan, with impressive midweek Champions League wins, and both will be going in with confidence high.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, Chelsea, they're on a, really either side of the break. They're on a superb run at the moment. Probably confidence will be as high as it's been, after the result against Barcelona. And at the moment, they've gone above, haven't they, Man City, and they're the main chasers at the moment. But Arsenal have then responded, haven't they, a day later with equally impressive, really 3-1 win over Bayern Munich, who had been, hadn't dropped any points, up to that stage in the Champions League. So all sets up really for, fantastic, London derby. Both teams full of confidence, and be interesting to see what happens.
Chelsea are 12-5 to claim the victory on Sunday. It's 23-10 the draw, and Arsenal 6-5. We'll talk about best bets in a moment, Tom, but I suppose you could argue that this is the best defence in the league in Arsenal, and arguably at the moment the best attacking team in the league in Chelsea.
Yeah, quite possibly, in terms of some informed players and the strength and depth that Chelsea have in the final third as well. They're going under the radar for me slightly, Chelsea, the way they've creeped up to second. As Dan alluded to, they've been on a really good run of form, highlighted by the victory over Barcelona in midweek. But yeah, under the radar, perhaps not being taken as seriously as they should be for a team in second. So yeah, they'll go into this game with confidence, but so of course will Arsenal, who seem to be blowing away everyone at the moment, whether you're Bayern Munich, you're Tottenham, whoever you are, you turn up and take on Arsenal at your peril.
The expression, Dan, of taking the handbrake off from Mikel Arteta this season, and most people feel that he maybe hasn't done it as much as he should. Do they go into this game, Arsenal, thinking a win is huge, or do they go, actually, let's not lose the match?
I think it might be kind of a little bit of both, really. That they're certainly going to go in. I don't think they would take a draw before the start of the game, but I don't think they'd be too fed up if it ends up in a draw. You look at, before the start of the season, your tough games. They've already kind of negotiated Newcastle away, come through that, one of the toughest away trips of the season. Obviously, they took the defeat, didn't they, early on away to Liverpool. But Chelsea is another one where you kind of look at it and you're thinking, if you do get out there with a share of the points, obviously they're quite capable of winning Arsenal and may well do that. But if it is a draw, keeps that gap to 6 points, and they've got kind of easier fixtures to come. From Chelsea's point of view, there could be a little bit of a similar approach as well. They're on a good run at the moment, but great opportunity. It's a match that could change the perception of the title race. Been a lot of talk, even though Chelsea's second at the moment, City are third. there's still, I think, a perception that City are the main challengers. If Chelsea win off the back of the Barcelona win, certainly I think the perception changes. I'm not sure that this result will change it. I'm going to go with a draw. I think the draw is overpriced here. I still think Chelsea are a work in progress. They're certainly improving, but not that long ago, you go to the home result against Arsenal when they didn't play well, lost the game. The Champions League result against Karabag when they made a few changes and were a lot poorer. I just think Arsenal, you look at 16 wins in all competitions now out of 19. Can Chelsea kind of put that sort of run together? Even now, even though they're improving, I'm not so sure. I mean, one thing with Chelsea, you can say you've got Cole Palmer still to come back into the mix. That could, improve them again. But right now, I think the match result prices, I'm not sure, but I'll be tempted to go either way. I think there's 20 minutes to go. I don't see either team taking too many risks, so going to go with a draw.
Tom, I know one of the biggest concerns with Chelsea earlier in the season was defensively, but they've got the likes of Fofana and Chalobah back fit now, and Tosin Adarabioyo's been back in the side as well. They do look a little bit stronger at the back now.
Yeah, they've got options there and decent players. I don't think they have a standout defender of the calibre of a William Saliba or Gabriel at Arsenal when he's fit. So I do think there are still question marks regarding Chelsea defensively. But I tend to agree with Dan. I don't think it's a game that the two sides will go into necessarily wanting to draw, but they maybe have a little bit more of a must-not-lose mentality than going all out for the victory. Because a point for Chelsea, I think that would underline that they are here to mix it with the very best in the league. And for Arsenal, you draw away at Stamford Bridge, it's never a bad result. It keeps a buffer between themselves and Chelsea. And yes, other teams might slightly close in off the back of that. But Mikel Arteta, I think, would be reasonably satisfied with that. It's worth noting as well, the last two meetings at Stamford Bridge have finished all square, score draws as well. So hopefully that means it will be a pretty open and entertaining game. We mentioned the attacking quality on show, but yeah, the price for the draw, like Dan was saying, it looks the best value.
Well, 4:30 on Sunday, just a reminder, Stamford Bridge is the venue for Chelsea against Arsenal. Our next on the list is another Sunday game. It kicks off at 2:05, and it's at the London Stadium where West Ham take on Liverpool. West Ham are currently priced at hundreds of 30 to claim the win. It's 8-11 Liverpool, and the draw 16-5. Tom, we'll probably talk a bit more about Liverpool in a moment, but in terms of West Ham, we've at least started to see some signs under Nuno that they are heading in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a slightly slow start, wasn't it, for Nuno when he first came in? I think there was a lot of work for him to do after Graham Potter left. But 7 points from their last 3 games is a good return for West Ham. They're out of the relegation zone now. They've beaten Newcastle at home. They've beaten Burnley at home during that run. And a decent point on the road away at Bournemouth. You do have to caveat that with the fact Bournemouth absolutely battered West Ham in the second half of that game, that the Hammers were really holding on, but still showed character, got a decent point. So they'll go into this game. They don't have a great record against Liverpool over recent times, but they'll go into this game with belief based on their own recent form. And of course, as we'll get on to, the struggles of Liverpool.
Yeah, I mean, Arne Slot under some severe pressure down at the moment. I mean, I happen to feel like it's a bit, I suppose, maybe I'm a little bit old-fashioned. It seems a bit ridiculous that a manager who won the league in his first season is already under pressure with Liverpool sat in mid-table. But the concerns are there, even more so after that PSV Eindhoven defeat in midweek. And, Hugo Ekitike picked up an injury in that game, and the difference between him and Alexander Isak is streets apart at the moment. Isak doesn't look fit. He doesn't look to be even making the runs that you'd expect from a £100 million striker. There's an awful lot of pressure on Arne Slot at the moment to try and make the right call here.
Yeah, and it's not just Isak as well. A lot of the summer signings have not really worked out at the moment, have they? I mean, Frimpong's had injury problems. Kerkez, I think, has struggled, in the left back position. Wirtz has, is taken a long time to adjust to the league. There's just, kind of problems seem to be everywhere you look at the moment for Liverpool, and it's being compounded, I think, by there's just a general lack of confidence. Which is, it can happen, can't it? Happened to Manchester City around this time last year. Everybody put it down to Rodri, but it certainly would have been more to their run than that, and their bad results ended up kind of like affecting their Champions League form, and they ended up having to go through the playoffs. And you could see that, maybe could be a risk of that happening to Liverpool now. They've dropped out of the top 8 in the Champions League. Every setback, when you're on a bad run, they've got back to level against PSV, and you start to boss the game, then you fall behind again, and there's no reaction. The players are, and the crowd as well, are thinking, "Here we go again," that type of thing. And it's going to take a bit of time, I think, for Liverpool to turn the corner.
Yeah, there is. And, I think the fans have to understand that that's going to be the case. Maybe a little bit of patience is needed. But before we get your best bets for this game, I wanted to ask both of you, in terms of patience, do you think the board stick with Slot? Or do you think if they were to lose at West Ham at the weekend, Dan, do you think that, they've got a decision to make?
I think they stick with him at the moment. I mean, at the end of the day, that you're going to have a lot of credit in the bank, from what he's done last season. How much of the recruitment it was down to him, and how much down to other people. Do you kind of write that recruitment off already, or do you say these players need time? And what might happen? They might just wait for the run to end, and often what happens when a team's struggling, they give the guy time until the run comes to an end, and then if they don't kick on from there, if they say they go and win at West Ham and then head off on another poor run, I think that could be the moment that they act.
It's a difficult one. There's not necessarily standout options, although there's even been talk of a Jurgen Klopp return. I'm not sure that is the answer for Liverpool, certainly long term. What was your thoughts?
I think they should stick with him. As you say, it's only a few months ago since he won the Premier League title. As Dan mentioned, it probably depends a lot. Was he knocking on the door to the board and saying, "I want to sign Florian Wirtz, I want to sign Alexander Isak," or is it other parts of the club bringing these signings in and he's having to work with them? Because the transfer strategy hasn't worked so far this season. As we've mentioned, a lot of the players that have come in have failed to hit the ground running for one reason or another. But you've got to back a manager that won them the title just a few months ago. We saw it the last time Liverpool won the league under Jurgen Klopp. They had a real drop-off the following season. Maybe not to this extent, certainly in terms of the recent run that Liverpool have been on. But I think Slot deserves to be given the time to turn things around. And it could still be a really successful season for Liverpool.
Game, though, on Sunday. Tom, what's your best bet for this one?
Yeah, well, I was tempted to go with West Ham based on all the points we've talked about with the Hammers in form, Liverpool not. But I've looked towards goals in this game. I'm looking at over 2.5 and both teams to find the back of the net. That has occurred in each of West Ham's last 4 games, whilst Liverpool, as we've seen, conceded 3 against Nottingham Forest, 3 against Manchester City, 4 in the Champions League against PSV. So defensively, they're struggling, but you still fancy that one of those attacking players, a Mo Salah, whether it's a Florian Wirtz, even Alexander Isak, they could pop up with a moment of magic and contribute to the scoring. Recent meetings between these sides as well, over 2.5 goals and both teams to score, has been a winning bet in 6 of the last 7 head-to-heads. The only exception finished 5-0 to Liverpool, so there were still goals in that game. So I think it'll be open, not necessarily because of the quality on show, but maybe 1 or 2 nerves.
Do you think the pressure's going to ramp up on Slot on Sunday?
Yes, I think that could well be the case. Look, Liverpool's price has moved, but they are still odds on to win this game. They've lost 6 out of the last 7 Premier League games. They've lost 9 out of the last 12 games in all competitions. The last 3 defeats have all been by 3 goals. There's serious problems to address here. And even if, they kind of try and go a little bit more defensive and batten down the hatches, well, if they take that approach, which is probably sensible, does that make them an odds-on bet to go and win it against a side that are picking up? West Ham have got 7 points in the last 3 games. 2 of them were home wins, well deserved as well. Played very well against Newcastle. Everyone at the time said, "Oh, Newcastle were just poor; they were under par." Then they did well against Burnley, and the result at Bournemouth as well. Although they gave up a 2-0 lead, to get that draw there, and no Paquetá in the side, who's been one of a big part of their recent upsurge. His performances have been very good. He's back. He's back into the side now after suspension. So for me, even though the prices have moved, they've not moved enough. I would go West Ham or draw, double chance.
Well, another manager under pressure is next on the list because Manchester United make the trip to Selhurst Park to take on Crystal Palace in a 12 noon kickoff on Sunday. United are 2-1 to claim the win, Palace 11-8, and it's 12-5 the draw. Dan, all that I suppose confidence and a bit of a morale boosting run of decent results from United was absolutely sent flat by that defeat against Everton on Monday, and it's almost back to square one.
Yeah, I mean, I was one of the people taken in there by that. I did say at the time that I didn't think they're suddenly an amazing team, and they're not they're improving. They're not a terrible team, but no, I mean that was a real poor performance. I thought. I mean, they were actually struggling with 11v11. Everton, I thought, started the game really well, and then Everton continued playing pretty well with 10 men, and probably the goal was probably deserved at the time, and United's reaction was so poor. Once again, the manager, whenever the circumstances, demand, a little bit of what do we say, sort of like off the wall's the wrong word, but different type of thinking. He's found wanting. He doesn't want to change his shape. You have the ludicrous situation: Everton pumping the ball forward, and 5 men in a line in the United defence defending against whoever the Everton centre forward was, whether it was
wasn't it? Yeah.
Barry or Beto when he came on.
Mm.
But no, having said all that, the prices have more than compensated for this, for that United performance. I mean, Palace have got the European game against Strasbourg to contend with. And by the way, Strasbourg are doing quite well. They're one of the tougher opponents for Palace in that league. And Palace, it's only a 6-game league. They've already had 1 defeat. So they've got to be a little bit careful, Palace, if they want to get in the top 8. So I wouldn't be surprised if they went with quite a strong team there. And if you're doing that away to Strasbourg on a Thursday, then you got to play United on Sunday afternoon. It's not ideal preparation, and for them to make Palace favourites, I'm not entirely comfortable with that. If I was really pushed, I'd say Palace are the likelier team to win, but the draw for me is the most likely result. 4 of Palace's home games in the Premier League have been draws. 5-2 the draw here looks too big.
Yeah, Ruben Amorim with more questions to answer again. Tom, is he going to be able to pull out a big result on Sunday?
It's difficult, isn't it? It's so hard to go into a Manchester United game with any real confidence one way or another. As we mentioned, I think most people would have fancied them to beat Everton on Monday night, especially if you knew that Everton were going to play the majority of the match with 10 men. But, this is Manchester United under Ruben Amorim. Very difficult to know what you're going to get. And this is a tough game away at Palace. As Dan mentioned, United do benefit from the fact that Palace have a tough Conference League game on Thursday night against Strasbourg. I could see this being a little bit of a Sunday snooze fest. In truth, I can't see a great deal of goals. I've gone for under 2.5 in the match, which is odds against, which I think is a decent value. All but one of the last 4 have been under 2.5 in the meetings between the two sides. Palace have the second best defence in the Premier League as well going into the weekend. Only Arsenal have conceded fewer goals than Oliver Glasner's side. So they're defensively pretty sound. I do wonder with the effort they have to go through against Strasbourg on Thursday, whether they will have that attacking impetus going into this game. I mean, they've not been scoring that many goals in the league. They drew 0-0 with Brighton recently. And I could see this being a 1-0 either way, but I find it difficult to know which way that would go. So that's why I'm kind of sitting on the fence slightly and going with the under 2.5 goals.
Switch from Sunday to Saturday's matches now, and it's to the Etihad we go for a 3 o'clock kickoff between Manchester City and Leeds. City are as short as 4-1 on to claim the win here. Leeds 9-1, and it's 11-2 the draw. I remember during COVID times, Tom, Leeds went to the Etihad and picked up a much-needed win, and a shock win on that occasion. Bigger ask this time around.
Absolutely, and this for me is the ideal fixture for City to bounce back after a couple of disappointing results. The first thing I wrote down on my notes regarding this game was response for City, and I expect them to comfortably win this game. You mentioned Leeds did get that result a few years ago, but the City have won the last 4 meetings between the two sides by an aggregate score of 16-2, which kind of tells you the gulf between the sides in general and in terms of coming into this game. City, before the defeat at Leverkusen during the week. They had scored 2 or more goals in 7 straight home games. Of course, they've got a certain Erling Haaland who's probably due a goal. He's had a slightly lean spell by his own high standards, and he'll be coming up against the team of the city of his birth in Leeds. So he'll want to perform well. City, Pep Guardiola will want a reaction. Leeds, for their part, 5 defeats in 6. The only away victory this season came at bottom of the table, Wolves. Take that with a pinch of salt, I suppose, would be what I would say regarding that. And I worry about Daniel Farke's future at the club and Leeds in general heading into what is a tough run of fixtures. So I'm looking at City to win this convincingly. I've gone with a City win and over 3.5 goals.
I'm just wondering, Dan, what impact Leeds dropping into the bottom 3 will have on morale and confidence now, especially going to City on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, it's never good to be in the bottom 3. I mean, they're competitive, aren't they? Leeds, certainly in the table, they're not as if they're like a Wolves and they're well adrift. I think the worry is that the home form started to drop off. I think away from home, you kind of expected that they wouldn't pick a great deal of results up, but the home form, if they're going to stay up, is going to be absolutely crucial. I just think there's a little bit of in terms of playing away from a lack of resistance, really. They're showing later. They took the lead, didn't they, against Forest? Quickly conceded and ended up losing the game. Even in the home game against Villa, took the lead again and end up losing the match. I just think I would worry for them in a fixture like this. I think City, when he was criticised, Pep Guardiola, for making 10 changes for the Leverkusen game, but that kind of shows you where his mindset is at the moment. They had 10 points in the bank in the Champions League already, so they're in a decent position there. In the league, they've got to make some headway. You look at the fixtures they got coming, City, in the Premier League. Leeds, Fulham, Sunderland, Crystal Palace, West Ham, Nottingham Forest, Sunderland again. There is a real chance for City if they find their level to pile up a lot of wins there and apply a little bit of pressure on Arsenal in the title race. So I certainly don't think they're anywhere near to giving that up. I think they're going to give it a right good go. And, the first team players are going to come back. It'll be the first choice side. And I've got a similar feeling to Tom. I think it'll be a comfortable Man City win. I've gone on the handicap route. Man City -1 on the handicap, a shade of odds on. So City to win by more than 1 goal.
Well, it's a Midlands derby to look forward to next at Villa Park. Another of the 2:05 kickoffs on Sunday. Aston Villa against Wolves. Villa 2-1 on to claim the win here. Bottom side Wolves 11-2, and the draw is 100-30. We got the first look of Wolves under Rob Edwards last week, Dan, and it didn't look much different to what we'd seen under Vitor Pereira. Maybe slight little improvements here or there, but again, another defeat.
Yeah, you probably saw there by me pulling a face there, Warren. I thought there'd been a little bit of an improvement, but I mean, it's from a low base, isn't it? I mean, the way they subsided, away to Chelsea. Well, that's a tough fixture, but I just thought the manner of that performance, they just looked like they were going there to get beat. I thought the Palace game, and Palace get a couple of quick fire goals midway through the second half, but before that happens, you looking at the way the game was panning out, you can't say it was definitely going to come in. It looked like an even type of game. Wolves actually finished the match with the higher XG. So I think there was a bit of an improvement. The problem for Wolves is they need a massive improvement, don't they? From where they are, they've got such a hole that they've dug themselves into. Now, there have been times this season before the confidence went. I'm thinking of the draws against Brighton, the draw away to Spurs that they should have won. When I've looked at Wolves and I thought, do you know what, you're not such a bad side, but and I wouldn't actually be piling into Villa here. I wouldn't be sticking them in for accumulators, because I still think Wolves had an improvement last week, and it wouldn't totally shock me if they go and pull a result out here. Now, I'm not going to back them to do that. I just think that they'll make Villa work for it. Villa got had a few injuries recently, got a really good win away to Leeds coming from behind, but at the odds, I'd rather be backing them to win by a single goal at 11-4 than piling in odds on.
Villa, obviously, with that decent run, Tom, have gone into the top 6 now, and they look a lot better than they did earlier in the season. But I would say that they don't look quite as strong as they did at times last season.
No, the jury's still slightly out, isn't it? I think they've been doing a good job of grinding out results over recent weeks, but results breed confidence. So Unai Emery's side should go into this game feeling it pretty good. And for Wolves, there would have been a little bit of a boost with Rob Edwards coming in the squad. The fans have been hoping for a new manager bounce. And although the performance might have been slightly improved against Palace, they still lost the game, so they've stepped backwards again. And I think this is going to be really tough for them. I understand what Dan's saying. It's difficult to suggest Villa will blow away Wolves in this match, but I do think they'll be able to grind out the victory. I mean, look at the stats for Wolves: 6 defeats on the bounce. They've conceded 2 or more goals in all of those losses. They've got the division's worst attack, the division's worst defence. They're on course for Derby's points record that no one wants from the 2007-08 season. So it just looks this bleak for me, Wolves. I think they can hang on in there in this game, but I can't see them scoring. Villa, really good home record. Only Crystal Palace seem to be able to win at Villa Park these days. But yeah, I think Villa to nil is probably the better. A 1-0, 2-0 scrappy victory after a midweek European game for Villa, but that'll do them, I think.
5 games down, 5 to go for us, and we're going to head to the Hill Dickinson Stadium next for Saturday's 5:30 kickoff as Everton play host to Newcastle. Everton 9-5 here to claim the victory. It's 13-8 Newcastle and 9-4 the draw. Irony wasn't lost on me after the Everton sending off of Idrissa Gueye on Monday night, because they now come up against the Newcastle team, who's the ultimate surely in infighting between Kieran Dyer and Lee Bowyer. I mean, it was nowhere near that much, Tom, in terms of Idrissa Gueye and Michael Keane. I have to say, I actually think the referee could have maybe just had a word or given him a yellow card. Thought, in my opinion, the red card was slightly harsh.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we're not promoting violence, but Lee Bowyer and Kieran Dyer went at it. They earned their red cards, if you like, for want of a better expression. I mean, that was... common sense is the word of the day, isn't it? I mean, it's a slight tap. It's a disagreement between 2 players because they both want to win a football match. No one was hurt. There was no real crime. I sympathise with the referee because by the letter of the law, he has to send Idrissa Gueye off, but maybe the law needs to be a little bit more lenient in those situations. But as we mentioned earlier on, Everton were fantastic, in the game, both before the sending off and especially after a really good victory. So they'll be confident going into this match. It's a difficult one to call, really, for me in terms of result. Newcastle's away form is poor. They've lost 4 in a row on the road across all competitions, but they were okay against Marseille in the week. They have a habit of scoring goals. They've scored in the last 5 away games. So instead of looking at an outcome in the game, I've picked out a potential player to have a big say, and I've gone for Newcastle's Harvey Barnes to either score or assist in the match. He's had 4 goals and 1 assist in his last 4 games. He's been thriving since he's got a chance in the starting 11. Anthony Gordon's back now, but Barnes kept his place against Marseille, scored that early goal. So I think he's a confident player. He's a player that could end up playing at the World Cup one way or another, maybe for Scotland, maybe even for England. But yeah, for me, I think Barnes to have a decent say in a game, which I'm not 100% sure what the scoreline will end up being.
Oh, it is hard to call this one, I'd suggest. I mean, I suppose Newcastle fans, Dan, they're probably thinking, would the real Newcastle please stand up? Because you don't know who you're going to get from one week to the next. I mean, they've performed really well to beat City. And then, of course, they lose against Marseille in midweek, having been in front again. It's just getting that level of consistency for Eddie Howe.
Yeah, I mean, but they're quite consistent in the fact that they're very good at home and they're not very good away, aren't they? I mean, that is the one thing that you can say is quite consistent with Newcastle, and it seems a simplistic argument, but I suppose, I think Everton are overpriced here. They're above Newcastle in the league. The transition to the Hill Dickinson Stadium, a lot of people, including myself, are wondering, are they going to really miss Goodison? I mean, maybe that will be the case as time goes on, but at the moment, they've got a nice feeling there. They're getting plenty of points at home. Their issue had been away from home as well, Everton, but they've then gone to United, got that. And I talked about United not playing well, but I thought Everton were fantastic in that game. The way they took the ball on and played good football at the start of the game, and then the way they dug it out, when they're ahead, with 10 men on the pitch, got some quality in the side as well. Likes of Njai, Grealish, Dewsbury Hall, as he showed with his fantastic finish in the week, and they do the ugly side of the game really well. So I just think this for Newcastle, they went lost away again in the week, having been in front in the Champions League match. They've not won an away game in the Premier League this season, and no, I just think Everton. Newcastle favourites to win this game, and they're below Everton in the table and they've got this awful away record. I disagree with that. Everton to win.
Well, Newcastle also below local rival Sunderland, still in the table, and it is the Black Cats that we concentrate on next because they play host to Bournemouth at the Stadium of Light on Saturday at 3 p.m. Sunderland 21-10 to claim the victory here. It's 23-10 the draw, and 11-8 Bournemouth, who are proving difficult to try and work out at the moment, Dan. Obviously not a great run. They responded well to going 2 goals behind against West Ham, but I read a few West Ham fans saying, well, the reason for that was taking Callum Wilson off and it allowed them the impetus basically to get back in the game. I mean, which Bournemouth team are we going to see this weekend?
Yeah, I think, I mean, with Bournemouth, sometimes you're kind of a victim of the expectations that you set. I mean, Bournemouth, the size of their club, they're 8th in the league. There's so much, going right there. They've still shown character and ability from their point of view to come back. I think without Semenyo as well, to come back to get the 2-2 draw. And you look at the overall balance of the game and shots and pressure. They could really argue that they probably should have won the game. So I certainly don't think we're anywhere near a crisis here. They lost a couple of tough games away to Man City and away to Villa, and then come from behind, drew with West Ham. I think they're going to get back to winning ways here. I think Sunderland, that loss at Fulham was a little bit of a reality check, I think, for me. The 1-0 result doesn't sound too bad, but Fulham were really dominant in the game, a much higher XG, 24 shots to 4. I know the goal came late, but it was kind of coming. And I just think that at the prices here, with the quality that Bournemouth have shown for the vast majority of this season, 11-8, that's big enough for me.
Oh, okay, well, Dan's going with Bournemouth here. And Tom, I was looking at the Sunderland stats earlier. They're yet to lose at home, and that is going to be key for their, chances of making themselves a Premier League regular fixture, shall we say. They have to have a good home sort of run and make Stadium of Light a fortress. They've got Bournemouth this weekend, where not necessarily, obviously, the pull of an Arsenal where they had in the last home game, but the crowd need to play a role here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Stadium of Light is such a tough place to go for visiting teams when the crowd are behind the home side. I do agree, though. I'm not quite as on Bournemouth as Dan is. I'm going with Bournemouth in the draw no bet market to win this game. As Dan mentioned, Sunderland beaten at Fulham the last time out, and they were quite flat in that game by the standards we've seen from them this season. Fulham should have won by more goals. They created a lot of opportunities in that game, got into decent areas, and just wonder maybe there might be a slight dip now from Sunderland. They've got tough fixtures to come. I know they're unbeaten at home, and it was a fantastic draw against Arsenal in their last home fixture, but it was slightly fortuitous to draw on home soil with Everton before that. And I just wonder if they're starting to just teeter. They've had that really good start, and they might regress back to the mean, if you like. And Bournemouth, as we've alluded to, recent results haven't been great, but they were really good in the second half against West Ham to come from 2 goals down. I think the West Ham supporters suggesting it was the Callum Wilson factor coming off. That's being a little bit generous towards them. I just thought Bournemouth were really good in that second period. And the 4-0 defeat they suffered to Aston Villa before that, again, wasn't a full reflection on the game for me. It was a much tighter match than that. I think the underlying numbers suggest that. So I'd fancy Bournemouth to get the victory, but because of that good Sunderland home record, I'd caveat it slightly by going Bournemouth draw no bet.
Well, we're off to the City Ground next for Nottingham Forest against Brighton, another of those 2:05 kickoffs on Sunday. Forest 7-4 here, Brighton 13-8, and the draw 23-10. Big signs of improvement, Tom, already under Sean Dyche for Forest, and at the minute, you'd have to say they'll drag themselves out of the problems they find themselves in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the side that were pushing for Champions League football last season. The vast majority of that squad is still there, so there is quality. They just needed a manager like Sean Dyche to come in and reinstall belief, confidence, and you can see they're starting to pick up decent results. The last 2 Premier League games, they've beaten Leeds, they've beaten Liverpool, and they've scored 6 goals across those 2 matches. So if I was picking a winner in this game, I would fancy Forest to get the better of Brighton. They were unbeaten in 3 meetings between the pair last season, including, a lot of people remember, the 7-0 victory at the City Ground, which was an absolutely emphatic result for Forest. Brighton, another one of these inconsistent teams. They're not amazing away, just 1 win in 6 on the road in the league this season. So I would be leaning towards a Forest victory, but because of that unpredictability at Brighton, I've looked instead towards a goal scorer, and I fancy Morgan Gibbs-White to net for the fourth successive Premier League game. He's one of those players that struggled under Ange Postecoglou for whatever reason, but he seems to have rediscovered his groove under Sean Dyche, perhaps with a point to prove after being left out of the last England squad. All 4 goals he scored this season, that's heading into Thursday's European game, have come since Dyche arrived, including, as I said, he scored in his last 3 Premier League games. So I could see him continuing that run. He's a decent price to score.
Is it fair to say Forest have turned the corner now, Dan?
Oh, definitely. And I think I've got similar views to this, to the Everton-Newcastle game, where Forest are going in as slight outsiders, and I disagree. I'm going to go with Forest to get the win. I just think that they're improving massively. The crowd are on board now. I think if you look at the 2 squads, I know there's a 7-point difference in the league at the moment, but I don't think there's a massive difference between the quality of Forest squad and the quality of Brighton squad. I think I think they're quite similar ability, and Forest with home advantage on a really good run at the moment. I know Liverpool are having a bad time, but still to win 3-0 there is a hell of a result. Going to do a lot for Forest confidence. And Brighton, as we mentioned, away from only one win. That win was when Chelsea went down to 10 men and they turned that game around, against 10 men. So there's a few concerns over Brighton's away form. Although we have to say 6 in the league, Brighton are doing great at the moment, but I just think Forest a little bit overpriced this weekend.
Okay, well, 2 more matches left to come, and the penultimate game is Tottenham against Fulham, and that's an 8 o'clock kickoff on Saturday night. Spurs are 23-20 to claim the win. It's 12-5 Fulham, and also 12-5 the draw. Dan, I know you watched the PSG game in midweek for Spurs. Not too much to sort of take out of that. I mean, people look at it and go, well, they scored 3 goals against the European champions, but defensively, again, issues at the back.
Yeah, major issues at the back. PSG didn't have to do a great deal to score their goals. That would be the worry. If you haven't watched the game, you probably think, oh well, aside of that quality, the way the football that they played some nice football, PSG, but they weren't completely camped in. Spurs half, there was, the game had a bit of an ebb and flow, and Spurs had their moments, but it kind of makes it worse in that instance to concede that many goals. First half, Spurs played pretty well. Second half, every time they had a setback, it just seemed to, the mentality didn't seem to be right. Conceded a goal, trying to play out. Terrible goal conceded from a corner. Terrible defending in the build-up to the penalty that was given away. And no Romero for this game as well. He's suspended. And although he didn't have his best game against PSG, he is a big player for Spurs. I think the drop-off from Romero to Danso, quite honestly, is massive. Danso really struggled in the North London derby last weekend, was taken off at half-time. And I think Fulham, given that Spurs have had these 2 shipped 9 goals against very good sides, but they've still conceded 9 goals in 2 games and have played on a Wednesday night. Fulham have, had their feet up all week, had that good win at home to Sunderland that we mentioned. They're starting to improve now, Fulham. The one thing they haven't done is get a result away from home, but I think they'll be licking their lips at this one. With Spurs, no Romero, and maybe tired mentally and physically after PSG, Fulham at odds against on the draw no bet for me is worth a bet.
It will be massive for Fulham, Tom, as well, if they could hook back-to-back wins together at the bottom end of the table.
Yeah, it would just give them that little bit of breathing room, wouldn't it? And I don't disagree with that. I think Fulham will fancy their chances coming into this game, but the Cottagers aren't PSG. They're not Arsenal. They're not going to offer the same kind of test to Spurs as those 2 sides. And I think Thomas Frank will be determined to tighten things up for this game and make Spurs a lot harder to beat and stop them from shipping the goals that they have been. So I think this might be quite a tight, cagey game. Spurs have a really poor home record in the league. Only Wolves have a worse record in the division this season on home soil, whilst Fulham, their only point on the road in the league this season came on the opening weekend against Brighton. So it's a poor home side against a poor away side. Fulham only scored 4 goals on the road as well. We mentioned earlier on, they were good against Sunderland, winning on home soil, but should have scored more. They're lacking that attacking spark, that creativity, an out-and-out goal scorer, really. So I think this might end up being quite cagey and tight. 1 goal either way. 7 of the last 9 meetings have gone under 2.5 goals. So I'm going for that trend to continue. I don't expect to see more than a couple of goals in this game.
Okay, well, last but not least, it's to the G-Tech Community Stadium for Brentford against Burnley. A 3:00 kickoff on Saturday. Brentford 9-20 to claim the win. It's 6-1 Burnley and 7-2 the draw. Tom, these are the sort of games where Burnley really need to be starting to pick up points from. Games where they go away from turf more against a side who, in Brentford, in fairness, sat sort of mid-table. It's a game that they could get something from.
Yeah, absolutely. And it would just, if they could get something from the game, even a draw, Burnley, it would give them that little bit of belief. Again, they're a side that struggled away from home. I feel like I keep using this as a benchmark. Their only away points have come at Wolves. Again, pinch of salt needs to be taken. So they need to start picking up results on the road. I don't see it happening, though, against Brentford. I think Keith Andrews, with a kind of a sea of negativity against him going into the new season, everyone expecting Brentford to struggle. He might be the first manager sacked, all this kind of thing. He's done really well. They've taken 13 of their 16 points on home soil this season, so the G-Tech remains a tough place for visiting teams to go. And I think they'll win this one and they'll keep a clean sheet. The last 2 Premier League meetings between the two sides at the G-Tech have ended in Brentford victories to 0. I can see that trend continuing. Burnley have scored goals. They've got a few goals in them, but they've failed to net in 2 of their last 3. So yeah, I think this might be a difficult afternoon. It won't be a tonking, if you like. I don't think Brentford will run away with it, but a 1-0 or 2-0 victory for the Bees is probably what I'm expecting.
Yeah, I mean, I'll hold my hands up and say I thought that Brentford would be one of those teams that might go down this season, having lost Thomas Frank and lost key players as well. But Dan, they've really impressed me, and I felt they were a little bit unlucky to lose at Brighton last week.
Yeah, and I think what myself included really have probably overlooked a little bit in the summer is that for a long period of time they've got a knack of recruiting to replace players that they've sold on for good money. And Dango Ouattara, although paid a lot of money for him, he's come in and made an impact. We talked about Liverpool's big signings not making an impact. Well, some of Brentford's are making an impact. Henderson, I think people were talking about Xhaka being one of the signings of the summer. I think Jordan Henderson is worth a shout as well. Whenever I watch Brentford this season, he's been absolutely outstanding. Gives them a lot of control in midfield. Leadership there in the centre of the park as well. I think he's been a fantastic signing for them. And the guy they signed a while ago, but was unfit nearly all last season, Igor Thiago he's been incredible, and that's going to be my bet here. I'm going to go Thiago to score any time. Shade of odds against. I thought that was quite big. You got a team Brentford. Long odds on at home to a side in Burnley who are really struggling at the moment, especially away from home. Certainly heading, I think, for a relegation battle. And when the home side's that much odds on, and your striker, he's the second top scorer behind Haaland in the league. He's also got the second highest XG, so it's no fluke that he's got that amount of goals. Odds against, you factor all that in, I don't think it's too bad. I'm going to go Thiago to score any time.
He takes penalties as well, which is always something to have on your side. Yeah, he did. Yeah, so that is the Premier League then concluded for this week. Up next, it's your FPL update, and then we'll discuss all things EFL. Well, it's FPL time again now, and Tom Hill joins us with his suggestions to who to have in your fantasy league team in game week 13.
It was a huge week for the differentials in game week 12, with none of the big hitters doing the business for our teams. Arsenal's Eberechi Eze top scored with 20 points after a stunning display in the North London derby, but the Gunners face a tricky clash this week with Chelsea. Game week 13 is looking to be quite popular for players using a chip, whether it be free hit or triple captain. So let's take a look at the best 3 outfield players for your teams this week. Our defender recommendation for game week 13 is Aston Villa's Matty Cash, priced at only £4.6 million. The Villains have quietly gone under the radar after a bad start, and defensively they've been sound. Unai Emery's troops have only conceded 11 goals this season, the 4th fewest in the league. Cash faces Wolves this week at home, and there's not many better fixtures out there. The Poland international plays as an extra winger on occasions, and has already got 2 goals this season. No team has scored fewer goals than Wolves with 7, and the Old Gold have failed to find the net in 3 successive games. So Cash looks a great value this week to do the business. In midfield, we've gone for an Aston Villa double up, and our man is Morgan Rogers this week, priced at £6.9 million. Rodgers scored a whopping 15 points against Leeds last week as he dragged his team over the line at Ellen Road. The England man has 3 goals and 2 assists to his name, and he looks pretty assured for 90 minutes under Emery. Wolves have conceded 27 goals in 12 games, and Rodgers is integral to everything Villa do in the final third. He's registered 11 shots in his last 4 appearances. We expect him to let fly whenever he can against the worst team in the division. Now, the forward pick is going to be obvious for many, with Erling Haaland facing Leeds United at home, and it'd be a good time if you have that to play the triple captain chip. We're stating the obvious when suggesting he's a good option, so for our official selection, we're going to go a little bit left field with Brentford's Thiago, now available at £6.5 million. Brentford have a plum home fixture against Burnley to look forward to, and Thiago already has 9 goals to his name. Most of Brentford's attacks go through him. He's had 28 shots, 9 more than any of his teammates. He's only blanked in 1 of his last 5 games, and he faces a Claret's defence with the worst XG conceded in the league.
Okay, well, we'll move from the FPL to the EFL now. And before we get Dan's best bets for the Championship, League One and League Two this weekend, we're going to have a look at the Championship relegation battle. Another defeat for Sheffield Wednesday in midweek, this time at the hands of Millwall. And they pretty much look gone, the Owls, at the moment, rock bottom of the table. Norwich also massively struggling. And it's very tight above them in terms of that final relegation spot as well. I mean, Dan, it's hard to call at the moment. How do you see things?
Yeah, I think certainly Sheffield United, they look like they're going to be okay now. They've got themselves out of the relegation zone. Nobody expected them to be anywhere near there anyway. And they may even be looking at, with so many games to go, trying to have a run and probably looking towards the other end and trying to have a run and get close to the playoffs. But certainly the other teams down there, Swansea are on a bad run at the moment, just changed their manager. Blackburn struggling to win games at home. So that these would be the sort of teams. Portsmouth are having another bit of a struggle to stay at the level, having been in the League One and League Two for quite a period of time. They're the sort of teams that Oxford and Norwich, I think, are going to be trying to catch. But I fear for Norwich. I mean, they're 6 points at the moment from safety, and Philippe Clement's come in. They're 13 games, without a win at the moment, and that draw 1-1 in midweek at home to Oxford scoring in the last knockings of injury time was such a huge blow. And if I was a Norwich fan, I'd be worrying a bit. I'd certainly in January need to be keeping Sargent and adding a few to the squad.
Yeah, and I don't think many people would have predicted that Norwich would be down there battling relegation at the start of the season. It's going to be a fascinating end to the campaign at the bottom end of the Championship. And we're going to get Dan's thoughts now on this weekend's Championship fixtures with a best bet in the second tier. And who are we looking at here, Dan?
I'm going to go with QPR around evens, draw no bet to win away to Norwich. QPR have won their last 2 games since the break, 3-2 at home to Hull in the playoffs when they played them. They dominated that game. Then they went to Blackburn and won 1-0 in midweek. Look, worthy winners there as well. They're only 2 points outside the playoffs, QPR. Not a lot of people expecting them to challenge, but they're certainly playing well, in good form. And they're going to a Norwich side. That was their first point, the game I mentioned at home to Oxford. The first home point, of the season they picked up there, but it would have felt like a defeat, conceding in the 95th minute, having a terrible time. Norwich, I think it will continue. QPR to win that one.
Okay, QPR draw no bet is Dan's selection from the Championship. How about League One? Who are we looking at here, Dan?
I'm going to go with Cardiff at home to Mansfield. Lost top spot to Stevenage, who had a midweek victory away to Peterborough. So they're second now, Cardiff, in League One, but I fancy them to win at home to Mansfield. Now, at League One, I get it that in recent weeks, if you're up near the top of the league, you tend to never win. It's been a bit of a crazy division. So backing a team at odds on that's near the top to win, it almost carries a health warning. But I do think that they're good value here. Just a shade of odds on. They've had a very good win last week. Northampton's not an easy place to go in League One. Had a good 3-1 win there. They've been generally strong at home. 5 wins out of 7 home league games. And Mansfield, quite a few injuries at the moment, and they really sort of collapsed last weekend. Conceded 3 early goals at home to Huddersfield. Ended up losing the game 3-1. Got quite a few injuries apparently in Mansfield at the moment as well. So Cardiff at just a shade of odds on at home. I think that's a good price.
Okay, so Cardiff is the selection in League One. And finally, who are we looking at in League Two, Dan?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Crewe to win away to Cambridge. Both teams sort of on the fringes of the playoffs at the moment, but Crewe unbeaten in the last 4 league games, played some very good football in last Saturday's 3-3 draw at home to Chesterfield, who have got a big budget at the level, a strong team. But you look at the stats on that game, Crewe have bossed the shot count 22-12, so that's a good sign for a team that's now, as I say, on a 4-game unbeaten run. Cambridge at the moment, they did have a decent win at Barrow last weekend, 1-2-0, but the guy that got both goals, and Panzu, who's a very good midfield player for the level, he's suspended this weekend. They don't score lots of goals anyway. Cambridge got a few injuries up front as well. Kouassi and Lavery, I think, are injured at the moment, so a bit of a lack of threat there for Cambridge. And against a Crewe side that are on form and playing well, I think Crewe are the likelier winners. I'm going to go with Crewe on the draw no bet.
Okay, so just a reminder of the EFL best bets from Dan this week. QPR draw no bet, Cardiff and Crewe draw no bet for the 3 selections. And we're going to turn our attentions to the Premier League again now. And it's Tom's go because he's got a bet builder for this week's big clash against Chelsea and Arsenal at Stamford Bridge. And what's the first leg of this bet builder then, Tom?
Yeah, I'm expecting goals at both ends of the pitch. I mean, we spoke earlier about the attacking threat Chelsea have. I didn't realise until I dug a little deeper just how good they've been going forward. They've scored in 18 games in a row across all competitions since drawing with Crystal Palace on the opening weekend of the Premier League season. They've scored 2 or more goals in 5 of their last 6 games. Arsenal, we know all about their attacking power. They've only failed to score themselves once this season. And they have been conceding 1 or 2 more goals than we've become accustomed to of late. Let one in against Bayern, let one in against Spurs when that didn't look likely, conceded 2 on the road at Sunderland. And there's still maybe a slight question mark about their defensive resilience with Gabriel out injured. So first part of this bet builder, I'm going with both teams to score.
And the second leg?
Well, Estevao has been playing really well for Chelsea of late and for Brazil. He's got 4 goals in his last 5 appearances for club and country. So I'm backing him to either score or assist in this game. It was a fabulous strike he produced against Barcelona in the week, showing his individual talents. So impressive for someone so young. He arguably outshone Lamine Yamal in that game. So I'm fancying Estevao to have another strong performance.
We've got another player bet for the third leg as well.
Yeah, and another player in form, certainly based on what he produced in the North London derby last weekend. Eberechi Eze, fresh from that hat-trick. I mean, for him to just have 1 shot on target, the odds were pretty good. He's had more shots in the Premier League than any other Arsenal player, more shots on target than any other Gunners man as well. So, yeah, 1 shot on target, I think it bumps the price up nicely, and it seems only sensible that will happen.
5-1 the price for the bet builder. Just to remind you again, both teams to score, Estevao to score or assist, and Eberechi Eze to have 1+ shots on target. We're going to move to our assist treble now this weekend, where we get 1 selection, of course, from the 3 of us. And Dan, we'll start with your selection first.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Salford, shade of odds on to win at home to Crawley. They're 12th Salford, but it's a tight league. They're only 1 point off the playoffs. Last 2 games, they lost 2-0 away to MK Dons and away to Bromley. They're 2 of the toughest away games in the division, and they played pretty well in both of them games as well. A little bit harshly treated by the scoreline. Playing now at home to Crawley, who have only taken 5 points on their travels, 19th in the division. I think it's an easier task, Salford, to win.
Okay, so Dan's gone with League 2. Who are you going with in League 1, Tom?
I've gone for Huddersfield to beat AFC Wimbledon on home soil. Huddersfield look like they might be turning a corner. They've won 3 of their last 4, including back-to-back home wins over Mansfield and Plymouth. And Wimbledon are suffering slightly from what Dan mentioned earlier on. When a team's near the top of League 1, they seem to fall away. They've lost 3 league games in a row. They've also lost to non-league Gateshead in the FA Cup in the not-too-distant past. They're not a team that were expected to be up there at the start of the season, and I think they're maybe regressing to the norm now. So Huddersfield to win on home soil.
I promise you this wasn't worked out as League 2, League 1 and the Championship, but I'm going into the Championship for my selection, and I'm going with Stoke to beat Hull at around about 4-6. Potters up to second now in the table after their crushing 3-0 win over Charlton in midweek. It's now 3 wins in the last 4 home matches. The only defeat came at the hands of league leaders Coventry. Mark Robinson's men have conceded just 3 goals in their last 5 home matches as well. whilst Hull have lost 3 of their last 4 games, and they have actually lost the last 2 on the road as well at QPR and Derby, and I think Stoke will be too strong for them on Saturday. So just a reminder, the assist treble is Stoke, Huddersfield and Salford. And we'll conclude this week's show with the naps of the week from both Tom and Dan. And Dan, we'll start with your nap first.
Yeah, going to go with that, Cardiff to beat Mansfield. I mean, they're quite a young team, Cardiff, so they're going to have little moments of inconsistency at times, but there's a lot of quality there. Strong home record, as I mentioned earlier. They're averaging more than 2 goals per game in home league games, and I think that's a bit of a worry. The Cardiff's firepower against Mansfield, who were 3 goals down, as I said earlier, in the first 20 minutes of last Saturday's loss to Huddersfield. Cardiff to win.
It's Cardiff for Dan. Who are you picking as your nap, Tom?
Yeah, I've gone in League One again, and I've been tempted by the price. Peterborough, heavy odds against to win away at Doncaster. Peterborough have won 4 in a row following the arrival of Luke Williams as manager. They did lose to Stevenage in midweek on home soil, but Stevenage have gone top of the table, so there's no real disgrace in that. And Peterborough are travelling to a Doncaster side that have really nosedived over recent weeks and months. No league win in 10. They've picked up just 3 points over that period. No League One side has a worse record during that time. So for me, the price is juicy and go for a Peterborough away win.
Okay, well, that just wraps up then all of this week's assist. My big thanks to both Tom and Dan for their input. Don't forget, of course, to like, subscribe and comment on the Racing Post YouTube channel. The assist will be back again next Thursday. But for the moment, enjoy your football this weekend and please remember to gamble responsibly.